What if the dumbest looking thing your dog does all day is actually the sharpest, and it's been running a con on you the whole time? You know the scene. The dog limps into the kitchen, one paw held up like a wounded soldier, ears folded down, the whole tragic little opera. And you're already halfway to the treat drawer when the doorbell rings and the patient forgets which leg was broken and rockets to the door at a full sprint on 4 good paws. We laugh, we call it faking it, and we move on. But sit for a second with the harder thing hiding under the laugh. Did the dog know? Not know that limping earns treats. That part's easy. That's just learning. Did it know that you believed something false and set out on purpose to keep you believing it? Because if it did, that clumsy performance on the linoleum is quietly one of the most demanding things a mind can do. Here's what makes it hard, and it's the hinge the whole story turns on. Nature is drowning in deception. A moth wears 2 enormous fake eyes on its wings, and a hungry bird flinches back, sure it's staring down something far bigger than a snack. A rooster will sometimes give the special cluck that means I've found food when there's no food at all, purely to pull a hen closer. Both are deception, neither is a lie, because the moth isn't thinking anything. It inherited a paint job that happens to work, and it would wear those false eyes, whether or not a single bird ever fell for the bluff. The rooster isn't picturing the hen's disappointment. There's just a switch in his brain that trips. Biologists call this functional deception, a signal that misleads, with nobody home behind it, doing the misleading, effective and completely empty. The other kind is rarer and much stranger. Intentional deception means deliberately planting a false belief inside someone else's head. And to do that, you first have to understand that they have a head, that there's a mind in there running its own private picture of the world, and that the picture can be wrong and that you can be the one who makes it wrong. That single ability has a name. In 1978, 2 researchers, David Premack and Guy Woodruff, gave it one. Working with a chimpanzee, they asked a question so plain it sounds almost childish. Does the chimpanzee have a theory of mind? Does it grasp that others have minds at all? That the keeper on the far side of the glass sees and wants and believes, and can therefore be fooled. The phrase stuck, and it split the study of animal intelligence straight down the middle. Because it turned out to be one of the hardest things anyone had ever tried to prove about a creature that can't tell you what it's thinking. Through the 1980s, 2 primatologists, Richard Byrne and Andrew Whiten, went hunting for it in the wild. They gathered reports, hundreds of them, of monkeys and apes seeming to run small cons on one another, and gave the pattern a name, tactical deception. But a field report has a stubborn flaw. You see the trick, never the mind behind it. You can't rewind the animal and ask what it meant. So the cases got sharper. Take the tufted capuchin, the brown, big-headed monkey of South America. In 2009, the behavioral ecologist Brandon Wheeler documented something almost cartoonishly sly. A lower-ranking capuchin, watching a rival settle in over a good pile of food, would suddenly loose an alarm call. The specific cry that means, "Predator, scatter now," with nothing out there at all. The rivals bolt. The caller strolls in and helps itself to the abandoned feast. A lie, or a lucky reflex that happens to pay off. Wheeler was careful here. He showed the false alarms cluster exactly when there's contested food to grab. But whether the monkey means to deceive is precisely the thing he left open. Then it gets genuinely uncanny. Take ravens. A raven hiding food while a higher-ranking bird looks on has a problem. The boss will simply rob the store the moment its back is turned. And researchers, among them the biologist Thomas Bugnyar, have watched lower-ranking ravens work around exactly that, holding back what they know, and even handing a competitor false information, going through the motions of hiding at one spot while the real food goes elsewhere. Or leading a rival away from the true cache and doubling back alone, timed for a particular audience and dropped the instant that audience stops watching. The raven isn't just caching, it's managing what another bird believes. And then there's Santino, whom I think about more often than is probably healthy. Santino was a chimpanzee at the Fårvik Zoo in Sweden, and Santino had feelings about visitors. In the quiet before the gates opened, before anyone was there to provoke him, he'd walk the water's edge and calmly gather stones, stacking them into tidy little piles near the visitor area. Then he'd wait. When the crowds arrived, his ammunition was ready. In a 2012 paper, the cognitive scientist Matthias Asvath described the sharper move. Santino began hiding the stockpiles. And under hay, behind logs, and holding back the usual screeching buildup so that a chimp who looked calm and unarmed could turn out to be neither. He was planning for a burst of anger he wasn't even in yet, and concealing the plan. That isn't a reflex. That's a strategy with a cover story. But the one that really lands, the one that might be dozing on your couch as you listen, came out of the University of Zurich in 2017 from a researcher named Marianne Haberlein. She built a little game. Each dog met two people, one cooperative who'd hand over whatever the dog led her to, and one competitive who'd find the treat and pocket it, the villain. Then the dogs were taught to lead a partner to one of three boxes, one with a sausage, a dull dog biscuit, one empty. And the dogs worked it out. With the selfish human, they steered her to the empty box far more often than chance. And saved the sausage for the partner who'd actually share. They didn't just learn a trick, they tailored it to the person. The truth for one, a dead end for the other, sorted by who had earned which. Alright, I have to stop and ask, because I suspect you're already ahead of me. Has your animal ever pulled something you'd swear on your life was a deliberate setup? Not clumsy begging, an actual staged con that left you genuinely outplayed. Tell me down in the comments. I collect those stories the way Santino collected rocks, and if this is the sort of question that snags in your head for the rest of the day, subscribing is how the next one finds you. Now for the part an honest telling can't skip, because for everything I've just described, there's a scientist standing with folded arms and a very good objection. And they might be right. Everything the raven did, everything the dog did, everything Santino did can in principle be explained without any theory of mind at all. Maybe the dog never once pictured the human's false belief. Maybe it simply learned over many rounds that this move toward this person produces sausage. That isn't mind reading. That's just excellent bookkeeping. The psychologist Daniel Pavanelli has spent much of a career pressing exactly this, that we are desperate to see a mind behind the behavior, and desperation is not evidence. And here's the hardest fact of the lot. Despite decades of trying, no chimpanzee has ever been cleanly shown to understand that another creature can hold a belief that is simply, flatly false. In 2016, an eye-tracking study caught great apes glancing ahead to where a person wrongly thought an object was, as if bracing for the mistake, a real crack of light under the door. But even that is argued over to this day, with careful people insisting it could still be something simpler than true mind reading. So let me be straight with you. That unresolved feeling, that itch of not quite knowing, isn't the disappointing part of this story. It is the story. We're standing at the very edge of another kind of mind holding up a small flashlight, and we cannot yet tell whether the thing looking back understands that we can be fooled, or is just spectacularly good at fooling us with no idea it's doing so. Those are two different animals, and we can't yet say which one is asleep at our feet. So where does that leave the limping dog? Somewhere far stranger than the joke allows. Deception itself is ancient and cheap. Moths and viruses have run it for as long as there's been anything worth fooling. But the other thing, the deliberate placing of a false belief into a mind you know is in there, is rare and precious. And it flickers right at the edge of what a handful of clever species might manage. We can't be sure the dog knows it's lying, but the fact that the question is this hard to settle should unsettle you a little. It means the line between their minds and ours isn't the clean, high wall we like to picture. It's a smudge. And here's where the whole thing turns over. We treat lying as a flaw. A thing to catch our pets doing, a small betrayal, proof of a sneaky streak. But look at what a real lie actually costs to tell. To lie to you on purpose, an animal has to first understand that you have a mind, that behind your eyes there sits a picture of the world and that the picture isn't the world itself, but a version of it, one that can be edited, nudged, quietly made wrong by someone standing right in front of you wearing an innocent face. That isn't stupidity or even ordinary cunning. It's the same leap a small child makes around the age of 4. Is on the force, the dizzying stretch when they grasp that what's in your head can differ from what's true. The discovery that quietly unlocks their first truly convincing lies. It's one of the most human things there is, and we call it growing up. So the next time you catch your dog holding up a paw that worked perfectly well a moment ago, don't reach for the word dumb. Sit instead with the stranger possibility. Not that your dog is simple enough to try a con on you, and one was at the Ratsikriets, but that it might be sophisticated enough to know you're the kind of creature who can be fooled. The lie, if it's real, was never the insult. It's the moment it looked across the kitchen and saw, behind your eyes, a mind.